welcome to Table Talk. We're back here. I'm with Bekah. She's going to be asking some questions this week and talking about the message, and we're just going to have some fun with that. So thanks for joining us from wherever you are and whatever you're doing right now. If you're at work or supposed to be working, we won't tattle on you. That's okay too. So how are you doing, Bekah?
I'm well. I'm recovering from yesterday, the long day.
It's a long day.
Yes,
I know.
It was a good day.
Yes. Good celebration. Yeah, thanks to everybody that joined us.
Yeah.
Really from near and far. Yeah. I know even some people that I think that were on the road that were like tuning in and driving. So
pretty fun.
Yeah. Good day here. And we're sitting here in Sanctuary and with our coffee. Woo! Because it's a Monday and we always need coffee.
More caffeine.
Yeah. So what's your mug?
My mug is Hogwarts. If anybody knows me really well, I like Harry Potter. So now you know my secret.
Awesome. And then this is my special rainbow mug. When it rains, look for rainbows, right?
And your mom just gave you that
My
one?
mom just gave me this yesterday. So I thought I would share it.
Very cute.
Excellent. Okay, so we are in Joshua.
Joshua 3 and 4.
Talking about Joshua this week and this whole series, a new season, and so my brain is like foggy, so I hope I have
okay. I have questions for you.
If not, we have conversation about crossing the Jordan.
Yeah, well, I was trying to wrap my brain around the message that you had and how important it was for us to remember, our story at the church and where you were preaching. And bear with me, I kind of thought of a metaphor, I guess you could call it. I don't know if you know anything about the Susquehanna River, but the Juniata River kind of comes into it. So you have the Susquehanna and the Juniata, and they converge in Duncannon. And so I was thinking we were kind of on a trajectory, and then COVID happened. So we're going to cross the Juniata River. But then all of a sudden, we have a pastoral transition. And now we have two rivers that come together, and it's a bigger river. And so we're kind of in the middle of that right now, crossing that. I think maybe we're in the middle of that transition and on the other side of COVID. And
have we reached the Statue of Liberty yet?
I don't know. How many of us have kayaks?
Exactly.
Are we stuck? Are our feet wet? Or are we in a kayak?
Yes, which I need to do more research on because some people were sharing some stories about that, and I was like, "That's so cool."
It is pretty cool.
I've never seen that.
Yeah. So I just thought that maybe that was kind of where we are. I feel like we're in the middle of these two rivers converging, and we're crossing that. And I was really intrigued by the arc theme that you did, and what is our arc? I know it's God going before us, but what are some of the things that are keeping us in check and our church from trying to go back and having God go before us and without stepping in front of God? What I know you mentioned some in the sermon as being, the sacraments and things, but can you elaborate a little bit more on that for our church?
Sure, yeah. And I think it's really interesting because the ark itself is a memorial of the past and God's faithfulness.
The manna, the rod.
Yeah, the manna, just all of those things, these items that are held inside, as well as, belief that God's presence was on the mercy seat. So it's funny that the past was used to lead ahead. Yeah. In a sense.
That is really,
Yeah. And I was just thinking about that. I don't think I even talked about that in the message, but the past was in it, leading at the forefront and then told to stop in the middle of that. And so I think it's just recognizing that some of the the practices of the church and even in our lives, what we've been a part of in the past, it's not necessarily replicating, but it's moving forward in the same spirit of that.
Right.
Because God didn't provide manna in the Jordan River, but He provided for them. So it's this idea of provision. The miracle of Aaron's rod, that, once again showed God's providence and power. And He allowed the people to walk through the river. So that was a different expression of that. So I think it's kind of seeing the core values of our church and congregation and saying, well, maybe a decade ago they were expressed in this way.
Right.
But how do we move forward expressing those same things? And I know part of that has been care for the underprivileged, the poor, that are trying to get back up on their feet. Like, I know that's a big part of the heart of this church, between serving in New Hope Ministries
Market Street Breakfast.
and the Market Street Breakfast,
right.
And the food pantry we have out front,
right.
Just all those things. So, and I think the food pantry would be a good expression of that, to say, hey, we've done things in the past, but this is where our community.
It's funny you mentioned that, because just yesterday I was hanging out with Micah and Macy Myers.
Oh yeah.
And I was giving them a tour of the church, and we looked at the food pantry, and they're like, it's kind of empty. So we went into my office for people donating stuff, and I had them fill up the thing. And so I just, that's the cool thing, including our kids in that too, in that expression of, even if it's just something really small.
Right. Yeah. And I think it can feel small, but once again, it's looking at like who we are, because ultimately as a congregation, like, we're not going to be able to do everything.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be lots of great ideas and even things that other people have done and tried and been successful at. But I think it's finding to say, okay, the core of who we are and how God has positioned us right now. How do we carry that forth in a way that it meets needs right now, and it's going to connect with people that are in our neighborhood. I think I shared with the board as well as some other people. We have people that are moving in all the time just in the immediate neighborhood around here, not alone. And then there's the whole online ministry expression. That
all over the world.
All over the world. And some of you guys, you probably don't even live in Pennsylvania. You might live states away, and whatever your connection is and how you're watching this. That's amazing. And that's something
incredible.
Yeah, and that's also something to be utilized. Like, I think that's a practice too.
It's a new era is dawning.
Yeah.
That kind of leads me into my next question. We're in the middle, our feet are wet. What keeps us from going back? How can people engage? You mentioned our core values. Core values at Table Life Church are: we gather, we give, we grow, and we go. And we center our whole worship service around that. We center our ministry model around that.
Right.
And what are some ways that you see that we can finish, crossing that river and engaging new people in ministry? And for a long time, COVID was centralized on just staff and a few people. How are we going to make this, everybody,
And I think part of that is right now I'm doing a lot of listening to folks and just hearing what's on people's hearts and how that fits into those values themselves and how we live that out. But I think it's also being mindful of we have guests in our midst.
Absolutely.
And folks that haven't been a part and don't know the lingos and and sometimes church can feel like an insider outsider type thing, and it's not because we make it that way. And this goes for like churches across the board. It's because we like each other. Praise the Lord for that. We want to catch up on things. But I guess I've really noticed too about like the part of connecting, welcoming new people. Certain individuals in our congregation that go out of their way to look around and say, okay, there's an unfamiliar face. Like, I'm gonna not make them uncomfortable, like make a beeline
to including.
And to be including and say, hey, do you want to sit with us? Like if it's at a meal or and just being intentional about that. And I think that intentionality is a big piece of inviting people to serve, inviting folks to, do you have an idea for a new group of ministry, and keeping those doors open, because I think otherwise it can make folks feel like, okay, well, they already have everything they need, they don't really need me.
Right, and getting people's feet wet, like you said, if they really, we want them to be a part of our community, we want you to be a part of our community, and how can we, be including of that? That's a really great point.
Yeah, and it also takes, and I think a hard thing too is, it also takes like for new folks like to want to be able to do that and to step in. I was having a great conversation with somebody yesterday that is a single person, and just how hard it is to like go to church by yourself. And just like venturing out, especially when you don't know anybody there. It's not like somebody invited you, and it's just like, it's not like you have somebody to sit with, even if it's like from your family.
It can be lonely too.
It can just be a lonely thing. And I'm like, well, because that takes a lot of guts
Absolutely.
to do that. So, and I think that's a part of like the getting your feet wet. Like, a lot of times we can like sit back and say, okay, well, you know, yeah, I want to go to church. Like, I want to go to church. I want to connect with people, but you don't like do anything about that. Like, there is a part of you have to put yourself out there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I think the beauty of table life is that if you put yourself out there, like we will do our best to connect.
Put you in
And
the
I'll
spot.
and I'll do my best to connect with you.
Right.
And, but it doesn't just happen, and I think that goes for other places too, like whether it's your workplace or even your neighborhood. You know, you might have neighbors that you don't even know and all, but it's not going to, you're never ever going to really get to know them if you don't like put yourself out there and be like, hey, you know, I know this is weird or something, but
actually say hi.
Yeah, and be like, hey, my name is this, you know, and this is my family, and I know we like haven't talked before, but I apologize, like, but you have to put yourself out there and do that. Like, and I think that's the part, it's uncomfortable to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like, that comes with it.
So you talked about in your sermon about consecrating yourself.
Yeah.
Not just, you know, personally, but as a group, what are some, you know, post-COVID things as we're getting back on our feet? What are some future opportunities that we can, as staff and as leaders in the board, provide to people to help shape their Christian formation and help them on their own consecration journey, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I think on a personal level, it's really important to be a part of that devotional practice and discipline. Is that, and I think that limits like church and your faith from just being a 1 hour on Sunday block of time.
Like a corporate thing.
And that's like the only part of it. And so incorporating that on a daily basis, and I know I shared a little bit about that, like it doesn't have to be a half hour. It can be 5 minutes. You can read a passage in your car before you go into work.
Bible apps that'll read you the Bible and then pray with you.
And
cool.
And even like, so I do the one of the readings of a Bible in a year. This year I'm doing the Nikki Gumbel version with Alpha and that kind of thing. And it's so funny, there's like a little calendar at the top of my phone, and it makes me feel so bad when I'm like,
you skip it?
Yeah, no, when I see like today is this and like you're back here, and I'm like, oh no, I need to read more. But it's not like a bad like guilt, like oh my gosh, like God's gonna hate me, that type of thing.
You'll catch up on a long drive.
Yeah, exactly. But it makes me be intentional to be like, okay, I can put it on the audio mode when I know I have a 15-minute drive somewhere. And so, like, once again, that it doesn't just happen. It has to be a part of that.
I agree.
And then there's, like, on a corporate level, too, one of the things that I'm looking to do as a church and community, and, you know, if you're located someplace else, you can do this, is prayer walking.
Oh, okay.
And to do that corporately, in small groups, not so it's like a mass of people walking down the street. That's like, what are they doing? Is it a march? Is it a parade? Mob, whatever.
No, it's good.
But to prayer walk our communities and to pray for the people we pass, the houses, the businesses, but also to listen with our eyes as well as our ears. What is God doing here? What do you notice?
What are some needs maybe you see?
Yeah, what do you see in people's yards that describes what's happening in their lives? What do you sense? You know, sometimes it's like you walk into a room and you can sense what's already transpiring.
What's going on, or what they
just
how they express themselves, what they're interested in.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, okay, and I think that just when you're walking like that, you know, I'm a runner, and you can't do the same thing though when you're running, because you're just moving a lot faster.
And you're in the moment.
Yeah, and your exercise, you know, it's just a different motive. But I think prayer walking together, and I would like to do that like locally around our neighborhood here, but also we have people that live in Mechanicsburg and Harrisburg and Camp Hill, and pick a couple of spots that to say, hey, let's have, like, even if it's a group of 3 to 4 people, just walk together, pray together, pause, and I think, and then come back together and say, what did you see? What did you share? What did you sense from the Lord? Because, you know, if we like, God's already out there doing things, and we want to join Him in those works, and connecting, then we need to notice that too. And because it's easy from the inside to be, or, you know, from a different position to say, oh, I know what those people need. I think, and it's like totally not even close to to what's really there.
It's true.
Yeah.
And also, I think maybe connecting in small groups,
Yeah.
like table groups
Right.
or Christian education, which we're thinking about how to
we're
do that
gonna
best.
for the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have a couple more of those going.
Get some
that,
kids programs going for our
Mhm.
youth and kids. So.
yeah, and really like trying to tie in that intergenerational piece too.
Absolutely.
You know, the kids need their own like things at their
Age
level,
appropriate.
age appropriate.
Right.
But I think also just for the longevity of children transitioning into teenage years and then to adulthood. It can be disconnected sometimes when it's like they've had their own thing and then now there's nothing for them because they haven't been incorporated into the body.
I've seen in the past when we do have intergenerational things how older adults connect with younger children, and I've seen relationships grow from that. Like mentors come out of that. So it's a good thing to see that grow, and then kids can learn from adults, and adults can learn from kids.
Right,
a lot of things I know
Totally.
I have. Lots of things.
Totally.
So I'm really excited about this next chapter of Table Life Church, and I think we're gonna make it through the middle. Lots of rocks and waves, but our feet are wet and we're in it and we're ready.
Yeah, and recognizing it's a holy place.
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was another point.
Yeah, someone shared that that was like their biggest take home, which I'm like, that's awesome. It's just like there's a holiness about that. Even if you're stumbling, even if your feet are wet, even if it's uncomfortable, it's like, God is here too. It's not just at the victory or at the end.
Yeah, and like you said, not to rush. We don't want to waste the beginning, but we don't want to rush it either. We want to. It's like everything goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
make good choices and
Yeah.
do what God wants us to do, and we'll be here.
Exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next
Everybody.
week, your message will be.
We are going to wrap up Joshua, and we're not going to do the whole book of Joshua, don't worry. This is just kind of the beginning part, moving into the promised land. So we're going to wrap up with Joshua 5 and 6, and the Battle of Jericho, a story but do you really know? And how does it apply? Ooh,
I'm very
intriguing,
excited.
Right? It'll be super cool. And
All right.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining
Thanks
us,
for
guys.
coffee time.
And I hope you had some caffeine in your life today.
Absolutely. Probably some more to come.
Some more to come. Yes, it's one of those days. And if you haven't already, go like us on Facebook, like the page. That way you're up to date on everything that's going on, and then the next table talk, and some of the events and things. We're gonna have a Water Fun Friday coming up at the end of the month, and then I think in August we're also gonna plan for a baseball game. Just a lot of great things, but also just social media is cool. That way we can continue to connect.
Absolutely.
So, okay, great. Take care, guys.
See you guys
Bye.
on Sunday.